Hey guys, welcome back to Coding Adda. Aditya this side, and in this video, we are going to see what are the different components that are present in GitHub Actions. What is a workflow? What are jobs? What is an action? What are runners? These are some of the most common concepts or most common topics that you would be hearing in the entire series. So let's just directly hop onto the computer screen and understand each of these components one by one. So GitHub Actions has 5 major components. As you can see, the first major component starts with workflows. Then we have job, then we have event, then we have action, and then runner. So let's go on to these things one by one. What are workflows? Workflows are basically configurable automated process that will run one or more jobs defined under .github/workflows. Now, what is a workflow here? These are a set of automated process that will run a certain kind of job. So main, you can say there is a one single thing which will be called as a workflow here. So this would entirely be a workflow. Okay. Then it would have a set of jobs that would run. And how do we have that workflow in our project? Whenever you are having a GitHub repository which is initialized in your entire project, you will have a .git folder, right? So what you have to do is go on to the root file and then create a folder with the name .github/workflows and make sure you include it on your repository when you are committing the change, because then will the GitHub understand that there are actions or GitHub workflows present in your repository. So this is the first thing. This is what we say as workflow. Okay. After understanding workflows, what are jobs? Jobs are a set of steps in a workflow that is to be executed. Let's say you have a job, and the first thing you have to do is you have to check out from the main branch. Check out meaning you have to check out all the code from the main branch into your server. Next, you want to check if there are any linting errors. So let's say you want to run npm run lint. This is basically to check if there are any linting errors or CSS related or variable related errors, so that it does not cause any failure in production. So these two steps are considered as job. As we said, set of steps in a workflow that is to be executed. Now each step can be a shell script or an action. Okay, steps are executed in order. So here, let's say if inside this workflow we have one step to check out the code. Next step is to run lint. Let's say the next step we want is to check for code quality. Okay, so here the order in which we have written is the order the job will be executed. The first would be checking out the code, second would be using npm run lint to check the linting, and then to check for the code quality. This comes under what we say as job. The third thing is event. So what are events? Events are specific activity in a repo that triggers a workflow run. For example, pull request, open an issue, or code commit. So to understand what are events, let's just go on to the repository that I have, github.com/weather29, and let's take just an example of the readme repository. Okay. Now, if you have understanding of what is Git and what is GitHub, you may have come across various things like creating a pull request, merging a request, creating issues, opening a issue, XYZ. So these events are those activities on which you want to trigger the workflow run. So let's say you want to trigger a run or you want to trigger a GitHub action when there is a change made from dev branch and made a pull request to the main branch. So whenever there is a pull request made from dev to main, that's where you want to call out that GitHub action. So that's where event comes into picture. That particular thing is called an event, like the creation of pull request, opening an issue, or you are checking in a code into a given branch. You can also specify which branch you want to check out or check in the code and when you want to trigger that GitHub action. Okay, so that's where event comes into picture. Next thing is the action. So what is an action? These are custom application for GitHub Actions performing complex but frequently repeated tasks. This can be used to reduce repetitive code. Now what happens is whenever you are, let's say, building a project, when you are deploying a project, usually what you would do is you would run npm run build. let's say there is a disk folder that is created after that. And after that, you want to also check for linting errors before checking in the code. Now that becomes a repetitive task, because if you are building a software, if you are building, let's say, or even a portfolio, that becomes a repetitive task and that would take out a lot of time for you. So that's where an action would come into picture, which will help you automate these tasks, which are repetitive tasks, whenever you check in onto the code before deploying it into production. So that's where hosting services like Vercel come into picture. They have these steps or these action inbuilt. If you have deployed any of your project into Vercel, you would have known that, okay, Vercel has an npm run build or npm run lint happening every time we are checking in the code, so that there is no false error or false code checked into the production. So that is a kind of an action that Vercel internally has deployed. Next is runner. What are runner? Runner are the server that runs your workflows when they are triggered. Each runner can run a single job at a time. And there are two types of runners that are present here. One is a Git hosted runner and one is a self hosted runner. So usually the runners that we have are Git hosted. If you are someone who is deploying something or who has created a GitHub action, by default what we do is we run it on Git hosted runners. Okay, but let's say sometimes you want to have the runners which are custom to your use case. You want to have a ARM hosted runner or Linux 64 based hosted runner where the RAM is bigger, where the processing is much better. That's where you can have self hosted runners. So how to see where are the runners present? You have to go into your project settings, go into actions and click on runners. So that's where you will understand that, okay, these are the runners that I have. Currently, all the projects or all the GitHub actions that I have on my repositories are on Git hosted runner. So I don't need a reason for a self-hosted runner right now. In this series, we will also have a self-hosted runner where we will be using Docker to understand those entire working behind that. So yeah, these are the 5 major components that are used in GitHub Actions. We start from the workflow. Workflow has a job. What is a job? Job is a series of steps that are performed when things are to be executed. They can either be a shell script or an action, and these are the steps that are executed in order. And event is a specific activity which will help to trigger the workflow run. Okay, or we can say which will help to trigger the job. Next, what are actions? Actions are the custom applications which will help you to automate the frequently repeated tasks. And the last thing are the runners. Runners are basically the servers on which all the GitHub actions will run. These can either be a self-hosted runner or a GitHub hosted runner. So now that we have understanding of what are the different type of components that are used in GitHub actions, in the next video, we will understand what are workflows. We will go on to each of this component one by one and we'll deep dive into what are workflows in our upcoming video. So if you like the video, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel, and see you guys in the next one. Until then, bye bye.